Googan just dropped a brand new swim bait known as the Rival, and today we're going to be comparing it to some of my other swim baits. That is right, guys. Googan has dropped a brand new lure, and I thought it'd be a great idea to show you guys exactly what this thing looks like in the water and just trying to give you a comparison about its competitors or maybe its previous take, the Contender. So with that being said, guys, let's take a closer look at this bait, then get out there in the water and test it out and see exactly what it looks like underwater. Now, if you guys are interested in picking up this bait, you can do so at shopkarls.com or googansquad.com. I'll make sure to leave links below with my discount code so you can save some money. Now, one of the first things you may notice about this bait is it looks very similar to the Googan Contender, but there's definitely some differences along with those similarities. They do have the same swivel hooks, but if you take a look at the actual soft plastic tail on the structure of these baits, it is definitely a different overall size. The Googan Contender definitely has a bigger tail than the Rival, but one thing that I noticed about the Rival that is different from the Contender is the overall width of this bait. While the Googan Contender seems to be longer as far as a vertical structure, the Rival seems to be wider overall and have a heavier weight. So I'm assuming they did this to help with the motion of glide baits. Now overall, once again, this bait has a lot of similarities to the Googan Contender, including all the same paint jobs, the same eyes, the same structure of the bait, and the overall length is also the same. But when you compare it to some of the other swim baits that are on the market, it definitely stands out and looks a little bit more on the budget-friendly side. Comparing it to a Tiny Klash or a TK by DRT, you can't really compare the looks of the bait, but the overall physics and the movement of the bait should definitely be somewhat similar. Now, comparing it to a bigger and more similar structure bait like this paperweight, you'll notice it has a more similar movement and a more similar look. So with that being in mind, I'm going to take these two baits out with me today and we'll test it out and kind of do a comparison to see how they hold up against this Rival. I'll also make sure to bring the Googan Contender so we can just see how it compares to its previous model. Testing out this Rival for the first time. We got it on a Cast King Spirelli with a Shimano Tranx 200 or 201 left-handed. Going to do some simple casts and we'll test out some faster motion, kind of give it a nice all-around idea. Now, to get a good idea of how this Rival swims in the water, I decided to get not only an above view, but an underwater view for you guys as well, and we'll be testing it in a few different types of retrieves. One being a steady retrieve, one being a slow roll, one being a cranking motion, and one being a fast retrieve. Now, one thing I will say about this Googan Rival is it tends to sway a little bit heavier than other swim baits that I've used, and if you're not careful with it, it can kind of spin out. Now, I will say that that typically happened on long pauses and long drops, and I think that has to do with the slow sinking style of this bait versus a super slow sinking or just a floating bait, which I typically use. Overall, this bait does have a really good motion, but one thing that I think stood out more than anything was the sound of this bait. It is extremely loud in the water. It has a clicking and clacking sound. I'm not sure if that's because of the material it's made out of. I know it does have a knocker inside the bait, but I'll have to say this is one of the loudest swim baits I've ever used. Now, after comparing all these baits, I'll have to say I'm pretty impressed with the Rival as far as the price goes and what you get in the water. You can't really compare it to these higher end baits because it wouldn't be actually fair to the bait makers, I feel like, or to Googan, just because they are such different products. But overall, as you can see, there tends to be a very similar look, feel, and design when it comes to these baits. So overall, I feel like you are going to get what you're paying for when you're buying this bait. In comparison to the Contender, I will say that the Contender definitely has a different style and movement, which I kind of like more than the rival, but it definitely is nice to have these two separate styles of baits, so if you do want to pick something that's more finessey like a glide bait, you can do so with ease. I will also say that the Contender typically sinks a lot faster, I just did not have hooks on mine. Now with that being said guys, I feel like we got a good understanding of how this bait works and how it compares to other baits on the market. Hopefully you guys enjoyed and hopefully you got a good idea. If you liked today's video, please hit that thumbs up. I'm thinking about making this a series where I pick out lures every week to show you, so if you have an idea of what you'd like to see next, let me know in the comments below. But that's going to be it for today. Thank you again for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.